All right, we're going to start our Niddah class. This is going to be kind of a basic starting point for everyone, and hopefully people who are attending and people who will watch later will find this beneficial. So we're just going to start with the basics, and anyone, if you have any questions throughout the class, you can unmute yourself and ask it. So I'm going to screen share so you can see what website I'm using, which I use I've used quite a bit in the past because I've had questions, and this is a resource you can use because a lot of us Messianics don't have a rabbi we can go to or a rebbitzin we can go to ask questions about the issues of Niddah and family purity. So the basic, I'm going to start actually here at the bottom because I always want to start with the Torah sources. So this website is actually based in Israel, and it's just a really good resource, and I'm using it because it kind of gives the basics, because you can get the book I suggested as well as other ones that go into much, much more detail. But this one's nice because you can actually give a call to this number. They have a US number, and they also have an email. You can email them. I've utilized this several times, especially because the Niddah status can be a bit complicated after childbirth and when you're in the postpartum period, especially, and it can be kind of, what do I do? And situations come up, and it's all anonymous, which is great. So the law of Niddah appears in the Torah twice. Leviticus 15:19 15:19 states, a woman who has a flow of blood in her body shall be a Niddah for 7 days, and all who touch her shall be ritually impure until sundown. Leviticus 18:19 states, a woman in the ritual impure state of Niddah you shall not approach for sexual relations. The first verse refers to the laws of ritual impurity, Tuma, Vatahara, most of which are no longer applicable today because we have no a red heifer. We obviously don't have a Beis Hamikdash. We don't have the ability to become clean truly especially in regards to Av Tuma in terms of like a dead body. So if you've ever been to a funeral, you have Av Tuma, and you cannot be cleansed from that without the red heifer. And the second verse, however, appears in the last list of the most severely forbidden sexual relationships, such as adultery and incest, which remain fully relevant to this day. So the practical laws of Niddah are presented throughout this site. So in terms of the practical application, sorry, my kids are a little bit distracting. They're supposed to be asleep. So in terms of the Tuma question, that's not irrelevant because it will become relevant again. But in terms of what's forbidden in a husband-wife relationship, it's very relevant. So it's still forbidden to have relations with a Niddah. So this also, this really has to do with, in the context of marriage, single women are always considered a Niddah. So that's a lot of the reason you don't have men and women touching in Orthodox circles at all. Because of one of the issues of which is Niddah. It's presumed if a girl has passed 12, she's a Niddah, and also just it's a modesty thing. So the onset of the Niddah status, a woman enters the halakhic status of Niddah when she experienced a uterine bleeding, not due to trauma. So like if it's not like a wound. So sometimes you can, if you have like a procedure or something like that, you can, or there's a wound in that area, there could be another explanation. But in terms of it's anything from the uterus, you're a Niddah. So while the most common cause of Niddah is menstruation, Niddah and menstruation are not always synonymous. Any uterine bleeding not due to trauma, spotting caused by hormonal fluctuations, bleeding after stopping the active pills when using combination oral contraceptives can render a woman Niddah, even when it is not menstrual. So this is especially like postpartum wise after having a baby. That's why it gets kind of complicated. A woman can be Niddah if just a drop of blood exits her uterus at any point in her cycle. So if you have mid-cycle bleeding and that kind of thing, it can get really iffy. So that's why it's really important to study these laws, and especially for young girls who are about to get married, they usually have a kala teacher to address these issues. A woman ceases to be niddah and returns to a state of ritual purity, tahora, by confirming that bleeding has ceased, hefik tahora, counting 7 blood-free days, shivat nikiyam, and immersing in a proper mikvah. So is there any questions with this section, or is this all review for you?
I think I'm good with that.
Okay. So, all right, we'll just continue them. So, according to the Torah law, uterine bleeding renders a woman niddah only if it is one of the specific hues of red, or if it is black. Only if it is accompanied by a physical sensation, hargasha. So this gets a little bit technical, but basically, like any kind of hint of red as a woman, you probably know what I'm talking about. A discharge that has no trace of red or pink, clear, white, yellow, or green does not make a woman niddah. Brown shades of coffee with milk or lighter with no hint of red also does not make a woman niddah because it's like old blood essentially. Darker shades of browns and browns with reddish tint require evaluation by halakhic authority. A lot of, especially nowadays with the issues of modesty and that kind of thing, oftentimes there is a way to do this anonymously. I've been able to find those ways, like where I live, they usually have like drop boxes, and you have like you put your phone number and they text you essentially. And so it's very it's not, the way it used to be. You had to actually go to like a rabbi and get it evaluated in person, which is obviously embarrassing. So they found ways, to mitigate that, and also so that women wouldn't be so hesitant and try to make shaky halakhic decisions. So a woman who discovers an apparent bloodstain on her clothing or another surface may be denied as well. The halakha in such a case may depend on whether or not she felt a hargasha. If she did, then she's considered niddah. So we'll touch on that later. If not, then her status depends on several factors. So that we'll get into. That's a whole chapter in a lot of books. So uncertain, in any case in which a woman is unsure of her status when she is bleeding of a questionable color or finds an unexpected blood stain, she should not independently assume that she's in niddah. Rather, she should consult a halakhic authority. Until her status has been confirmed, however, she should follow all the laws of niddah. And this talks about bleeding from trauma, and also a uterine opening. So this one case, so like for example, when a woman is in childbirth and in labor, once her uterus opens, whether there's bleeding or not, she's considered a niddah. Just and then all the laws of niddah apply. And look, they're just saying here that there's a debate with genealogical procedures. So as long as there's no opening, it's fine. So that's kind of the basics of what a niddah is and the onset of it. So I think let's see. So do you know a lot about, you said you read a couple of books, so have you read a lot on stains, for example?
I've read certain things about that. Like it depends on, well, yeah.
Right. Okay. I'm just seeing if this is like a larger section here. Okay, so this is more specific, so I'll go ahead and go with becoming tahora. Have you ever been to a mikvah? Have you gone through that process at all, or no?
No, not.
Okay, so are you familiar with the process, or are you a beginner in that area?
I've seen videos explaining that, but that's as far as my experience goes.
Okay. All right, so let's see, exiting the niddah status and becoming a tahora entails several stages. So confirming that menstrual bleeding has ceased after a minimum of number of days. So this is where I think this talks about it. And we'll go ahead and talk about this. So you have to wait a minimum of, I think for Sephardi, which I think it touches in here, Sephardi says 4 days and Ashkenazi says 5. So that's the major difference that I'm aware of between Sephardi and Ashkenazi custom of how long a woman has to wait before she can start counting those 7 clean days. So here it talks about a minimum wait. A woman must wait at least 5 days from the time she becomes Niddah until she begins counting the Shivat Nakiam, 7 clean days. She counts the day on which she becomes Niddah as the first of these 5 days, and then she counts 4 full days from sunset to sunset according to Jewish calendar. If she has stopped bleeding, she may perform a Havis Tara prior to sunset on the 5th day. And there's of course, like everything else in Judaism, there's a debate, like I mentioned. So that's when it becomes Niddah between sunset on Saturday and sunset on Sunday, may do her Havis Torah on Thursday, the 5th day. She begins counting her Shivat Nakiam on Thursday night. I actually use an app for this because sometimes that just helps kind of take the guesswork out of it. So if I put like I started I started, my period on a certain day, like in the middle of the day, I put that in and it will automatically tell me like when I do my Hefsek Tara. And that I'll touch on in just a minute. So it's really helpful. There's a lot of apps out there that do that for you. I think this one I have is like $6 a year or something. So then once you do that, then it will send you text reminders every day. Because it can be hard to remember, especially when you have, I have 4 little kids at home, but any woman who's got little kids at home or just generally has a busy life, it's nice to have the text messages. And yeah, so here you go. Some Sephardic authorities permit women to perform Havasara on the 4th day and begin, the counting on the 5th, both a day earlier than we presented above. In that case, or in our example, a woman who has stopped bleeding by Wednesday could perform her Hezatara then. Many women have longer menses and in practice are not able to perform Hezatara as early as the 5th day of their period. So like before I had kids, and sometimes even I would have like literally 7 days I couldn't start counting until after like day 6 or 7. So it just kind of depends on each woman. So it's depends. So like ever since I had my 4th baby, I've had very short cycles. I've only had 2, and she's 8 months old now. So I haven't gone to mikvah all that much recently. And I've been either pregnant and nursing affects that and all that kind of stuff. So even when women's menses are short and who has become Niddah because of mid-cycle staining may not start her Shivat Nakiam until the 6th day from the onset of her Niddah status. So that's a little bit, and there's a lot more detail in here. And there's the issue of staining and that kind of thing. I'm gonna grab something so you can actually see it. Let's see. Need to see what it looks like. So I don't know if you have a Judaica store near you. Well, this might not be in a Judaica store. It's usually, I think I've seen it in a Judaica store, but if you live in your Jewish community, I don't know if you do or not, but or you can order these online. Are you near a Jewish community?
No.
Okay, so you can order them online, and because you're in the process of trying to figure out how to, you don't have to really worry about mikvah and that kind of thing until you've completed conversion anyway, just FYI, so you don't have to feel like these halachas do not apply to Gentiles. So, or people who are in the process of converting, if that makes sense. Maybe start like I don't think there's, especially if you're really sure you're gonna do a conversion, like I don't think there's any problem with like practicing, but in terms of actually like if you're not near a Jewish community, you're probably not going to be able to find a kosher mikvah. So like that's why when people convert, they generally have to move to a Jewish community. So I would endorse Chicago because we're trying to grow a community. But but I wanted to show you this. So I just say that so you don't feel pressure and like you're learning these halachas, but they don't really apply to you yet. So this I buy these just at the grocery store. They sell so any large Jewish community, you'll have them. They're called Badika cloths. Have you heard of those or read about them? So it comes like a little package like this. You can see that.
Yeah, I've read about that.
Okay, so what it actually looks like, because sometimes you read about it, you're like, huh?
It's like a white cloth, right?
Right. Yeah, I'll show. I don't know if you've seen pictures or whatnot, but it just looks like this. It's literally just like, and it has this little, it's kind of perforated here because my set, and I've never actually used these. I guess if you have, I don't even think I have the stickers anymore. Oh yeah, I do. So it has these stickers that say, Chavis Tara, third, first, second, third, in case you want to do that. So some women, I guess, find that helpful. I've used them, I think, once in 7 years of marriage in terms of the stickers because I was unsure. So like I think it's mostly when you submit it to a Rav to look at that you need to like, so you can tell, oh, this is day such and such, because they try to find leniencies in it. So I just wanted to show you what that looks like. And that's what a Havetz Tahara is. You start the counting there. My husband is texting me. Any questions about that?
No. I wanted to ask you about the app. Is that a specific app for?
Yeah, let me get the name. Yeah, it's called Mikvah Calendar.
Okay.
So that's helpful. And like I said, since you're in the process of trying to figure out how to do a conversion and that kind of thing, I wouldn't worry too much about it. But learning is obviously the first step. So so that's all about the minimum weight. And these things are really cheap. They're like, I think $3 for like 24 of them. Because you have to do 2 a day. So you do that initial one, and then the 7 following days you do one in the morning and then one in the afternoon. And there are some, depending on like if you're really sensitive, you can do less, but that kind of thing. Okay, and they go in a lot more detail here. So counting the Kiyam 7 day clean days, which begins on the day following the Chavetz Tahara and properly immersing in a kosher mikvah. So we're going to touch on the 7 clean days here. A woman who's a Niddah who wishes to return to the status of Tahara, ritual purity, must first perform a Chavetz Tahara to ascertain that all bleeding has ceased. And this can take a couple of days. So I've had situations where I've, I'm like, okay, I think I'm done, and I'm not, and like, it can take, a bit to get to that point of actually starting to count, like I mentioned before, because some women have 6-7 day long cycles. So here's an interesting tradition. And so when you start the 7 clean days, and I don't want to just sit here reading it because you can read it, but like, so it's traditional to change your sheets to white, to change you wear white underwear for those 7 days, and that so that you can absolutely ascertain that you've been you've had no bleeding during those 7 days. And if you do have any kind of bleeding, you have to start the counting over. So that could be a bit complicated, like I've mentioned several times, postpartum, because you're like, I'm done, and you're not. So it can be really frustrating. So it said, if you don't want to ruin your underwear, so reusable white cloth panties are permissible during the clean days and are halakhically similar to white underwear. Disposable panty liners are a matter of debate, so they don't suggest those. This particular site, halakhic supervisor, that when a woman wears them for her comfort to absorb discharge, or some cases when she's staying might interfere with counting the clean days. So really, you really need to find, this is why I love this kind of website, because I'm actually able to consult with women. And I've called them a couple of times and asked them questions and things like that, which has been really helpful. Because it can kind of be overwhelming if you're doing it on your own. So Badikot, during the Shevet Nekiyim, a woman performs a series of internal examinations, Badikas, to verify that the bleeding has never recurred and to establish awareness of the 7 days. So you gotta make sure you count those 7 days, and like I said, having the app really helps as well. And those text reminders. You should do 2 Badikas each day, one upon arising in the morning, anytime after dawn, but preferably after sunrise, and one in the afternoon before sunset. So just a note here, you need to make sure that you do them during the day. It's at night it's not valid. Okay, if she forgets a Badika or even both on days 2 to 6, she may continue counting in this. In some cases, when the examinations present difficulties, the halakhic authority may instruct a woman to admit some examinations depending on her particular circumstances. So if you're really sensitive, you might go, okay, you got to do one on day 1 and day 7. So, so you at least, this is really important. So you got to do at least one on the first day and one on the 7th. If you admit either one of those, you have to postpone going to the mikvah. Okay, so in general, this clean period is valid as long as these things are followed. They're preceded by a hefsek tahara. They include a badika at the beginning and the end, and no more than 5 days elapsed without a badika. So, like I said, that 1st and 7th day. So if you have any kind of stain, or anything questionable thing, it invalidates the counting and you have to start again. So some women, especially if you're on hormones or anything like that, or maybe you're taking certain medications, it can be quite difficult to actually get to count these days. So any questions about, and this is nice here, it has a little chart here. So for example, one performs hefsek tahara on a Monday afternoon before sunset and plans immersion the following Monday night. Her 7 days begin on the first Monday night they are. So like this is a nice little chart when you actually can immerse. At nightfall on Monday, her Shevet Nekiyim completed, allowing her to immerse in the mikvah. Does that make sense in terms of how to count, according to the calendar?
Yes, I have one thing that I need you to clarify.
Sure.
The difference between the bedika and the hefsek. Like, what's the difference between these two things?
Okay, well, you use the same cloth, or not the same, but like the same type of cloth, not literally the same cloth. So the difference is the hefsek tahara is just establishing that the bleeding has stopped.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's just establishing that, and the bedikas are during like that next day. So let's say if I've done 5 days of, I've had 5 days of menses, and on that, and the right before, it has to be late afternoon, right before sunset, you do this hefsek tahara, and you don't find any bleeding, then sunset happens. That starts the first day. And so the next day you start your bedikas. Does that make sense?
Okay. So, but it's basically the same thing.
It's the same procedure.
Yeah, right. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And so that's just making sure everything is stopped, but it's the same procedure. It's really, once you get used to it, it's pretty easy to do. If if you're, I do, natural family planning and stuff, so I'm very aware of my body and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not as aware of yourself, then it can be maybe a little bit challenging, but you get used to it. It's very soft. It's not irritating or anything like that. So, I don't find it to be a problem. Maybe some women do. There is an extra humrah where there are some women, who actually leave. They have leave a badika cloth in for like an hour. That when they're trying to get to start the clean days, but that's a humrah. Um, so that's kind of like part of it. So I don't even think it's mentioned it here. And there is exceptions where you can get that omitted and be okay. So, and that basically that evening, that's when you put on the white sheets and white underwear and all the rest of it. So that's kind of a basic overview. I'm probably going to use the book next week. And get into kind of like more detail. I just kind of want to do a general overview. I'll touch on the conduct. Well, let's do mikvah and then I'll do conduct. So the mikvah, we'll go to the page. We'll just do the overview here and then we'll do conduct or Niddah. Mikvah immersion is the final step in the process of becoming Torah. This is a Torah law based on the authoritative interpretation of several biblical verses. Okay. So Leviticus 15:18, they shall bathe in water, Numbers 31:23, in which mikvah is referred to as the waters of Niddah. A woman is a Niddah who immersed following her 7 clean days becomes tahora and is permitted to resume physical intimacy with her husband. So you said you watched some videos and that kind of thing. Basically, I'll just describe it to you because I've done it a number of many times. So you basically you only mikvah at night, women only mikvah at night, and you go to, wherever you have your mikvah in the Jewish community, you usually make an appointment, and you go in and they have, several bathrooms for women to prepare themselves. And the real key to the reason why you have to prepare yourself before mikvah, you can't just go on mikvah, is you can't have anything between you and the waters of the mikvah or it's not valid. So like, let's say you had some nail polish on or something and you went mikvah, that mikvah wouldn't be valid because that's there's a barrier between you and the water. So in order to make sure your mikvah is valid, you have to clean yourself really, really well. You take off all your makeup, the nail polish, you clean every part of your body. You even have to make sure all the tangles are out of your hair. Like you have to be like, usually it takes between 30 minutes to an hour to prepare. There's usually a fee associated with it, a pretty minimal. And then there's a lady there who takes you into, you tell them you're ready. There's a lady who takes you into the mikveh area. And it's very modestly done. You get into the water, they're not looking because you're stripping down to your skin. And you get into the water and then and then you immerse, then you say a bracha for the immersion. And then they tell that what the reason the woman is there is so she can tell you if every part of your body, including your hair, has gone under the water and it's kosher. So you come up and they're like kosher, and then you finish and you do that 2 more times for a total of 3 times. And usually women will pray afterward while they're still in the mikvah, and then you get out and you're done. So that's kind of the very basic broad overview of that process. Any questions about that I don't know how much you've read on that particular topic of the actual mikvah part.
Yeah, I think I get this part.
pretty simple. So and just to clarify this again, mikvah is only used by married women.
Mm-hmm.
It is not used by single women. And so the first time a girl will ever go to a mikvah is before her wedding. So she'll actually go to the, because she obviously wants to be tahora for her wedding. So, and then there's a whole one, I'll probably do a whole class just on what happens after the wedding for a bride. Because that has its own kind of special set of halachas and that kind of thing. It's very, very different from your typical get married and, go on your honeymoon. They don't do honeymoons in the Jewish world. So, it's very different. Or the Orthodox Jewish world. So that's the, process of the mikveh itself. So kind of the difficult part in terms of the husband and wife, there is no I'm trying to get to the page here. There is no physical touching during Niddah at all. You can't even like hand something to your husband or vice versa, or throw something to your husband or vice versa. Like it's very, very strict, and that can be a very kind of I found it can be very stressful. If you allow it, you just have to be careful with your communication and that kind of thing. So this is why also, if you've done any reading or watched videos and that kind of thing, the entire reason for husband and wife in an Orthodox home to have separate beds, because of you can't share a bed during that time. And I actually, this is kind of a funny aside, but my husband and I have found out that so when we initially got married, kind of out of not knowing any better, we didn't have two beds, and then once we got two beds, like a couple of years into our marriage, because we had studied up more on Niddah and started following those laws, we saw that we slept a lot better. So I personally love the fact that Jewish law requires two beds, just out of practicality. Like it just, rather than your husband going on the couch every month or something, it'd be awkward. So how much have you studied those particular laws? And have you guys ever followed those?
Okay, so this is where I have not. As far as mostly it's been that we abstain from having relations during my period. But
Okay.
as far as anything else, I haven't really followed it. I've read about it, but I haven't really followed it because I'm still struggling with the whole idea of not touching at all. I understand the reason, and I obviously am going to submit to it once we do the conversion and everything. But like right now, I'm not like mentally ready for that part yet.
Well, that's good. Well, that's really good to know, because you don't want to do something, because a lot of times when people get all what's the word? They get very passionate about doing Torah, and then they run into something really difficult like this in a marriage situation, and they can't do it, and they give up on the whole thing. So that's really good that you decide, like, I'm not ready for this yet. Like, that's good that you're kind of taking your time on that, because this is probably one of the most difficult aspects. And I mean, even with my husband and I, we mess up all the time. We don't want to, but it's so like you hit like, hey, hon, I need the keys to the car. Like, it's just kind of awkward being like, oh, where do I put the keys? And or the baby, I can't hand the baby to him or something. Like it's just, we have an 8-month-old, so it's just like gotta put the baby down, then he's gotta pick up, and it's just very awkward, especially right after having a baby, and you're like,
need all the help you can get.
Yeah, like it is really hard, and yeah. So I'll probably, because it's getting I think we're on this time, it's like 10 to 10. I'm probably gonna stop here and save this particular one for hopefully I'll be able to do this next week as well. So, and we'll get into some more of since you're not as familiar with this section, we'll do more on this section of the conduct, because that's a whole class in itself. So I'll probably spend most of our time there next week. Was this helpful at all?
Yeah, it's a good review, definitely. I appreciate it so much.
Well, and hopefully for people, because I'm gonna put it on our page, like hopefully people who have no idea about it will kind of get at least a taste of what it is that Niddah is, because if you have no if you've never read about it, it's, you know, you got to have the basics, obviously. So I just wanted this to be kind of an overview, and then next week we can really get into the conduct specifically. So